Through the 1964 Cairo Convention, in which African nations voted unanimously to uphold colonial boundaries, that a series of Italian colonial treaties at the start of the century gave Eritrea its recognized international border today. Although the border has never been officially demarcated, close ties between Eritrea and Ethiopia after independence were reason enough to assume a bilateral process would complete that peacefully. But here in the Eritrean border town of Adimurug, an incursion by armed Ethiopian forces in July of 1997 indicated otherwise. Adimurug was a farming village in eastern Eritrea close to the border with Ethiopia. Ethiopian troops entered the town and dismantled the local Eritrean administration. In western Eritrea, in the border town of Badime, Ethiopian forces began to force Eritrean residents out of their homes and villages, pushing them north. The actions on the ground matched the Ethiopian publication in October of 1997 of this map, in which the Tigray region incorporates large tracts of sovereign Eritrean territory. The trouble along the border prompted Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki to write a letter to Ethiopian Prime Minister Mengistu asking why Ethiopian troops were carrying out such actions. A joint border commission was established at the request of Eritrea, but Ethiopia's acts continued, prompting hostilities in May of 1998. On May 13th, Ethiopian Parliament officially declared war, raising the stakes of the border dispute.
I call on all our people, in collaboration with all government agencies and defense forces in their areas, to stay alert to orders in defending our borders.
On June 6th, less than 1 month later, Ethiopian fighter jets violated Eritrean airspace to bomb Asmara, dropping a ton of bombs on its civilian airport. Those planes returned the next day for a second run. This time, however, one of the jets and its pilot, Captain Bezabel Petros, were shot down. Captain Bezabel Petros had been captured once before in Eritrea, while as a Mengistu-era pilot, Eritrean Freedom Forces shot him down, only to release him after independence. As a result of the air raids, the ground conflict quickly escalated. From a minor skirmish, it developed into a full-fledged war.
All foreign nationals who reside in Ethiopia, be it an Eritrean, Japanese, or German, etc., are in Ethiopia based solely on the goodwill of their host country. Therefore, if the Ethiopian government says, "I don't like the color of your eyes, and you have to leave the country," one has no much choice but to leave the country, because foreign nationals are in the country on the goodwill of the Ethiopian government.
In June of 1998, the Ethiopian government began to systematically arrest, detain, and deport thousands of Eritreans and Ethiopians of Eritrean origin from Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government claimed it was only targeting Eritreans engaged in espionage or who it said were dangerous elements. But normal businessmen, elderly citizens, the ailing, young children, often infants, all these were the targets of Ethiopia's new hate campaign.
I think basically to humiliate Eritreans. I think there was a serious campaign of humiliation. A great deal of this cruelty that is being committed is really needless. There's no, I mean, it isn't intended to enhance the security of Ethiopia. These people are in a helpless state. Basically, they are prisoners. They're being shipped off to their country. What can they do in that process? But there's the pretense that they can do a lot of damage, and therefore all the security organization is built around that idea.
Families were torn apart as thousands and thousands of innocent Eritreans were uprooted and forcibly deported. Arriving usually in groups of around 1,000, the deportees were forced to walk long distances in the dead heat across war zones.
But then, one thing that they used to do in the early stages, they haven't done that more recently, was to let the deportees cross over, walk this gangplank with explosives on both sides, as it were, and then to fire from their rear. The intention there is to lead the Eritrean side, our soldiers, into believing that they are being raided and start firing and killing their own people. There is dozens of pieces of evidence that says they are just stopping short of murder. They are perfectly willing to put Eritreans in a situation where they are exposed to danger, to death, but they're not willing to pull the trigger themselves. The most cruel thing that's been done is to children and to families. And that, we have made that the cornerstone of our appeals to international organizations. Why break up families? There's no justification for it. Why take mothers away from infants, parents from their children, husbands from their wives? All that is being done on a huge scale. Though our appeal went out some months ago to UNICEF Ethiopia and UNICEF Eritrea to try and reunify the children and look after them while they are there, stranded in the streets of Addis Ababa. And even more cruel step that is taken with regard to these children is that if the family lived in government-controlled rental property, as soon as the parents are deported, the children are evicted from their homes. So literally these are being thrown out into the streets.
The worst part of this deportation is the separation of the families and leaving children without any one member of the family.
I begged them to give me a minute to feed my baby, and they said, "Don't worry, you'll be back soon to do so." I've never seen my baby ever since.
Most adults who have been expelled have left families behind. We have hardly found cases of intact families arriving here.
The Eritrean Relief and Refugee Commission registered each and every Eritrean that came across the border. Provisions and amenities were provided for the cross-section of Eritreans who were dumped often at the most dangerous front lines along the border. For over 1 year, the deportations continued unabated. To date, over 64,000 Eritreans have been deported from Ethiopia. Eritreans were rounded up from their homes and villages in Addis Ababa and other Ethiopian towns and put into detention before being packed onto buses and driven to the Eritrean border, where they were dropped off, having been relieved of all their property and livelihood. It's estimated that some property worth $800 million that deportees left behind has been seized by the Ethiopian government.
Whatever steps we took on our part, they were taken on 100% legal grounds and procedures. Have we confiscated anybody's property, legally or illegally? No, we have not confiscated any property at all.
ያለ ፍርድ ንብረት የወረስንበት ሰው አለ? ከህግ ውጪ ንብረት የወረስንበት ሰው አለ? እንኳን ከህግ ውጪ በህግም ያንድም ሰው ንብረት አልወረሰም።
Even if we were classified dangerous, why should a government which claims to be very democratic deport us in such a hasty situation without due process of law?
I, for myself, I was not even given the opportunity to dress myself because I was just taking a shower. I was pulled from my house and I was thrown into the prison for 6 days.
የቀጠቀጥነው የገረፍነው ሰው አለ? አንድም ሰው አልተነካም።
Is there anyone whom we beat up and tortured?
ከህግ ውጪ የታሰረ ሰው አለ?
Is there anyone whom we have thrown in jail?
ውጪ የታሰረ ሰው የለም።
أنا أبغى أهله وساني هباركة. على هانت مساعي نبرن خالي.
I have done nothing. The Ethiopian soldiers came along and threw me in a metal container and pounded my sheep flock. I came from Asmara, the capital, to Tumara village to visit family members, and the Ethiopian soldiers rounded me up.
Eritreans brought with them horror stories of treatment they endured in detention before they were deported. Dogop was a young Eritrean living in Addis Ababa who was detained in an Ethiopian prison camp for several months. He lost use of his legs after a prison official gave him an injection. Doctors here in Asmara are still trying to determine what substance may have caused his paralysis.
مناتي كم خرد عن صغير زدن أنا خم زرد عني بسمويا تجبري.
As far as I'm concerned, this is done by professionals deliberately to injure and harm the subject. The injection was administered on the lumbar vertebrae area.
For Eritreans like Dagov, the experience in Ethiopia will be hard to forget, but for some, it was even worse. Gebra Kidan Zacharias was a 27-year-old exchange student studying in Addis Ababa under an exchange program with Asmara University. On June 14, 1998, he and 88 other Eritrean students were picked up from their dormitories and thrown into prison camps with thousands of other Eritreans.
I was in Awasa, in a place called Awasa, so they took us to Sidama Criminal Investigation Center. There we spent just 2 days. Within those 2 days, we were supposed to be fed by the government, but perhaps we were covering, the food, everything from our pocket. From then, we went to a place called Fiche. Fiche is, it's a detention camp.
On November 10, 1998, the ICRC informed Eritrea about the death in detention of 2 Eritreans, including Gebra Kidan. He had been dead for 1 month. The student body at the University of Asmara was crushed.
The agreement under which we were admitted to Addis Ababa University provided us some privileges. But not only were we denied those privileges, but also our basic rights as humans were violated. Gebra Kidan Zacharias died of this.
There is a sense of frustration here that is turning almost desperate. Thousands of Eritreans, including the 38 students, have been jailed for over 8 months, charged with nothing but an Eritrean heritage, and their death toll continues to rise. Ethiopian exchange students studying in Asmara under the same program were flown back to Addis Ababa after completing the year and sitting for their exams. For many Eritreans, equally as frustrating are claims by the Ethiopian government that Eritrea has been deporting its citizens as well, claims that have been refuted by several neutral fact-finding missions.
I have not yet been given evidence by my colleagues in Ethiopia that indeed Ethiopians have been expelled.
We interviewed not only factory floor workers but also those in a position of responsibility. So a number of Ethiopians that we interviewed were in charge of Eritreans. And again, they expressed even surprise that Ethiopia should accuse Eritrea of what it has accused it of mistreatment. These people that we interviewed were adamant, determined to assert that they were equally treated based on service, based on their experience and so on.
Mm-hmm. So evidently these findings of yours can disprove the Ethiopian government's allegation towards the Eritrean authorities of mistreatment and harassment.
The findings of the research I think would completely refute these allegations, yeah.
Border conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia had been at a standstill for over 2 weeks. But at around noon on Thursday, April the 15th, Ethiopian planes carried out 3 bombing raids on towns and villages in Eritrea. High-altitude bombers carried out raids on the village of Forto in western Eritrea and in the town of Mandafara, south of the capital Asmara. But it was here in the town of Adikeya that those bombings were felt the most. A little after midday, jets flew over the town 30 kilometers from the border with Ethiopia. Bombs destroyed this Orthodox church and injured civilians who were nearby.
أزي نيزمرك أرماوي سرح زي زفتمو نايب حقنا بعالم من قستاتي خونا من ربنا ما يكون زقف أزي نخوخنا عون بعالم ملوء تسارات.
We appeal to the international community and the World Council of Churches to condemn and put pressure on the Ethiopian government to stop this barbaric act of bombing our church and holy shrine.
A group of school children were walking home from lunch when the bombs hit. They sustained injuries from the shrapnel. 2 of the students and an elderly man sustained critical injuries. 11 civilians were injured in all.
Came home from work for lunch. Suddenly bombs fell, injuring myself and my 2 children who were sitting by my side.
No casualties or damage were reported in the other attacks. The Ethiopian government said it hit what it described as select and military strategic targets. But no military targets were hit, and the only real damage were the civilian targets in Adikeya. Ethiopian Antonov's MiG fighter planes and helicopters continued carrying out air raids, bombing different towns and civilian targets, killing 22 civilians to date. February 22nd, 1999, in a statement issued by the U.S. State Department, the U.S. urged the Ethiopian government to uphold the air moratorium immediately and to stop bombing economic targets and the civilian population. The Ethiopian government is still continuing the war and the air raids. Early in the morning on February 27th, Ethiopian Antonov planes bombed Shambuko, dropping a deadly cargo of napalm and cluster bombs across the little town.
The planes came out of nowhere and showered us with bombs, destroying all our houses.
The local marketplace was completely destroyed. A newly built school was also hit, and hundreds of homes and shops were leveled. Their bombed-out shells burned late into the night, testimony to the lethal and banned incendiary which were deployed. Here, town residents discovered the body of a man who was unable to flee his home before explosives razed it, incinerating everything inside. Town residents are distraught. Most of them have lost their means of livelihood. The town's food supplies were wiped out, and the harvest store took a direct hit.
I have lost my house and everything in it. I have lost all my property. I am left with nothing.
It was the third week that Ethiopia had openly bombed civilian and economic targets in Eritrea. High-flying Ethiopian Antonovs and MiG fighter jets have been strafing populated areas across the country since Ethiopia launched an offensive on February 6th. Calls for Ethiopia to cease targeting these civilian areas have been ineffective.
Why all this on innocent civilians, women and children? Why?
Only months ago, many of these people crossed the border from Ethiopia in search of a new life after the Ethiopian government had deported them because of their Eritrean heritage. For them, the bombardment of their new homes means they will have to pack up whatever remains of their possessions and start moving again.
سلام عبدا تتممو على فقمدا بين نابي كحد سيبي معاص البريم السلام مني ورق البسيط وريو سماي عظيم وتوسني نقود أيه كسد تقالب معبل بدب يحي دارت البوي بالحي بحي حوي السلام اللي ورق لبسي وري سماي علي وتصني 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 عدي سرمانتي رمي عدي سرمانتي رمي عدي سرمانتي تسلم لي ورق لبسي وري وسماي عدي وتصني تسلم لي ورق لبسي سماي عطي بوتسا تسلم لي ورق لبسي وري وسماي عطي بوتسني رمي عطي سرمان ماتي رمي عطي سرمان ماتي عطي رمي سرمان ماتي رمي عطي سرمان ماتي